to the Pharmacy View podcast, where we provide regular interviews with pharmacists and key people within Australian pharmacy and associated global industry. In this stream of podcast episodes, we discuss aspects of pharmacy ownership and economics and how each area interacts with the guest's current role or pharmacy-related business. I'm your host, Natalie Sirianni, Director at Attain Business Brokers, experts in selling pharmacies throughout Australia.
You've got to look at ownership as an investment. You can be a PAYG pharmacist and earn good money, right? But there's not many investments you can take your money, put in, get 14, 15% return, right? Maybe a bit less if you're paying too much. But it's a fairly strong, now that HCPA out, it's a very well protected area, very strong market. That's what's made it a strong market, which means the values keep going up. So your asset value is just going to increase. If you did nothing, you just went in there and just did exactly what the old owner did, which you would never do, but say you just did nothing to it, you're still going to get capital growth out of the asset and pay for your debt. Like it's a no-brainer. So when you think about, well, why should I buy? Well, if it's right for you, again, if that you want that lifestyle, as an investment, it's probably smarter than buying a pharmacy and buying a house.
Today with us, we've got Mark Churchill, who's the Managing Director of Allfin. Thanks very much for your time today, Mark.
Oh, thanks for making the time, Natalie. It's a good opportunity to get our name out there and answer a few questions about pharmacy.
Definitely. So obviously you've been in pharmacy for a very long time, Mark, and firstly starting with the pharmacy banking side and then many years at Allfin, your company, which is finance broking throughout Australia. Tell me a little bit about your experience in pharmacy and how you got into it.
Yeah, well, it's like anything. No one chooses to go into pharmacy finance. You just sort of fall into it. I'd had a little break from corporate. My background's actually asset finance. Well, before that I was an auctioneer, but then went into asset finance, doing big heavy machinery and for corporates. And then I took a gap break in my career and went over to Guernsey because a mate of mine ran a pub over there. And 3 seconds from walking in the door there, I had a job setting up trusts and for funds and stuff like that over in Guernsey. So Guernsey's the Channel Islands between England and France. Mm-hmm. So a very big drinking culture. So I was there for about 6 months, and then they said, if you're going to get out before winter because it's a horrible place to be. So I came back to Australia, and a mate of mine in banking said, mate, the NAB's looking for some good bankers. And he said, mate, I said, I've never really done banking. I've done asset finance, but never really done banking. He's going, mate, you'll be right. All you have to do is have a relationship with the customer. Everything else is all the people who support you. So I went to NAB and joined NAB, interviewed, went in there, had no idea about pharmacy. 60 to 70% of the portfolio got given was pharmacy. Okay. And this is what Pat Rodriguez and those guys are now works with me. He gave me 5 minutes of his time to teach me about pharmacy. I think he was hoping I'd fail. And then we got into this, I didn't know anything. So basically what I did was just go, I don't know any of these guys, so I'll just go and see all the clients. Mm. And they'll just teach me about their business. Yeah. So the best thing you ever do, right, you sit in front of a client and just go, you tell me about me, I'm here to listen. Yeah. And as soon as you told them you didn't know anything about pharmacy, they were more than happy to teach you. So basically I learned on the run about pharmacy. So the best people to teach you about pharmacy are pharmacists. So I learned the intricacies of pharmacy through them. Then I got all these deals, but I didn't really know much about finance. So I took all these deals back, and my boss, Mark, at the time goes, you're out a lot, you've seen a lot of clients, you see the call reports, you're doing a great job, but not a lot of deals. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. I've got all these deals sitting here, but I don't know what the next step is. Yeah. He started laughing at me, so we got some help from some of the analysts. We got these deals through. So it was on the hop. Yeah. And then obviously NAB was really successful at it, so they started NAB Health, and then so that was Specialised Industry Group, and then NAB Health was Martina, she started it with Rob Wright and these guys, and was one of the first senior partners. Picked up a portfolio, and they transferred my portfolio across. Yeah. And then went on to, got poached to CBA and ran CBA Healthcare for Southern Region, and then I got the tap on the shoulder. I had a job offer in Sydney or a redundancy. So, what better time to take some money and go and start your own business? And then fell into, and you got to choose what's best for you, right? So into pharmacy finance, into broking.
Fantastic.
So that's kind of the financial journey.
Yeah. Well, that's a good. I feel like that's a good story into how you got into Allfin as well, because I didn't know that in terms of going from CBA and then into that. That's cool. And obviously, a lot of pharmacy owners throughout Australia work with Allfin and have for many years. So very reputable brand from that point of view. And I guess that the thing with, like, obviously in your journey, you're obviously going from the bank and then to pharmacy finance. Throughout, you've worked with pharmacy owners that are, large groups, and they're buying, big numbers of pharmacies and, those really big operators. And then obviously you've worked with first-time pharmacy buyers and things like that. And I'd like to focus on buying, because I think that's a really key part, particularly for the first-time buyer, the mentality around getting into ownership. What would be your top tips for someone who's considering, a pharmacist out there, is currently working for someone else and considering whether they take that leap into pharmacy ownership?
It's a big step. Look, it's a financial, from a financial perspective, it's a bloody expensive exercise, because, the average pharmacy's what, 2 to 3 million now.
Yeah.
So it's even coming as a shareholder, it can be daunting. What I find is if you're working in a store, that's the store you should be buying or trying to buy into, because you understand the numbers. Unfortunately, when a retiring pharmacist is selling his book, and this, Nat, is that they want to get extracted maximum value out of that asset. And so they will do everything they can to get the top dollar. And sometimes, some things don't add up, right? But if you work in the store before you buy it, you actually know the numbers, you know the scripts, you know what's going on behind the scenes. It's a safer option.
Yeah.
And that's, find a good, if you're a first-time buyer, go and find a retiring pharmacist and cling on to them, because, that's the business you really want to buy for a first pharmacy. And then you get to know the business, the customers, you've got retention, people aren't going to walk out the door when the pharmacist walks out the door. If you speak a language, and you're in a community that has, if you're Asian or Indian or French or Irish, it doesn't really matter. If you're in a community that actually has that client base, or Egyptian, that's you sort of look at the demographics and all that sort of stuff and sort of find your way in there. It's a bonus, but it's not the end, be all and end all. But those sort of things. One of the old Greek pharmacists, mate, you had to talk Greek, and the Italians and the
what the customers are speaking.
Yeah, but it's a good start. Know the asset you're buying, But if you're buying an asset, if you happen to have the Wintats Lotto and you've got the equity and all that sort of stuff, you've got to get the right people around you to buy it. You don't just do the numbers on the back of an envelope and think that'll do. It becomes a big process after that.
Totally. Yeah. And I think what you just mentioned about buying a business that, like the amount of risk that takes out of the transaction process and the amount of unknowns it takes out, that's a really good point. And then obviously you mentioned the, winning tax lotto kind of thing, the average sale price being 2 to 3 million. Like, it doesn't make it easy. Obviously the bank does lend money, and you can provide some commentary as to the bank's appetite for pharmacy at the moment. But what are the options for those that are looking to buy a pharmacy? What are the options in terms of financing? How can they go about getting that money?
When you're looking at 3 main ways, so you got, it's like think of a home loan, right? So when you go and buy a house, you've got to save, you save less, but let's just say it's an 80% lend from the bank, and you've got to save 20%, and then you got your stamp duty and all your legal costs on top of that. So it's not that dissimilar to buying a pharmacy. But the thing is, when you buy a house, you're using the, when I do a PAYG and they're buying a house, you look at their wage, and that's how much they've got to service it. Whereas it's kind of back to front with a pharmacy, you've got to look at the servicing of the pharmacy to support the debt you're going to borrow. So you got the bank will lend you up to probably 75-80%, right? First-time buyers are probably a little bit more hesitant, but, professionals like us can get it through at a slightly higher LVR. And that'll also go around other things you put into that. We can talk about that later. But when you buy, you've got three options. You go to bank and mum and dad, which is great. The boomers, it's about time they threw some money at you, go to your grandparents, do whatever. There are some risks around that, is if you're borrowing for your parents, the bank's going to want to know the terms you're borrowing on. So they'll have to put that in their servicing. Most likely, the parents would have to extract cash from their other assets, so the house, redraw on their house and give you the cash. You can't cross-secure their property with the pharmacy because they would have to give a guarantee. And when they give a guarantee, they've got a financial interest in the asset. And they can't have a financial interest in the pharmacy because then it's against pharmacy ownership laws, right? So there's a bit of a grey area there. So when you put the cash in from your parents, you've actually got to subordinate the loan. So they'll have to provide a letter saying, we never expect this money back, basically. So it can be a bit of a risk for the parents, and if you've got other siblings, and it can be a bit of trouble. We've worked around it before. We've got around and helped the parents out and done all that. But generally, we don't see a lot of that happening at the moment. It's just it's sort of disappeared.
Yeah. Because it's too difficult.
The next option is it's just it's a bit of a grey area because of the again, you by subordinating it. They're sort of going, well, I'm not really protected. If something happens to the pharmacy, or even, you have a bust up your parents or something, it's not just giving you the money. So it's not too bad. It's not, the worst thing that can happen, but what it does is it creates a grey area. And especially, again, if you've got brothers and sisters who are there and you've sort of been given all this money to buy a pharmacy and, that's their retirement nest egg is that house that you've borrowed against to give you the money. And if it doesn't work out, well, complicated. The second is you can go and borrow a mezz debt type funding arrangement. So what happens is you borrow 80% from the bank, your 20%, you go and borrow from a third party or second tier lender. There's a couple out there that will do it. We used to have a fund that used to do it as well. But you borrow at mezz debt rates. Yes. So
which are a lot higher, those rates?
Yeah. So, you borrow the cash from the bank at around 6.5% at the moment, 7% if it's a leveraged transaction, which this will be. And then you borrow probably 14-15% from a mezz debt lender. Then what you want to go is like an interest-only term with them, pay down your bank debt, and we'll talk about how you create wealth in that as well. So it puts a lot of pressure on your cash flow because you're going to pay them at the same time you pay the bank. The banks don't tend to like that, so they want to know the terms of the loan. And again, it's interest only, and the only way you're going to pay it out is that you refinance in 3-4 years' time and get the equity back out of the asset and pay them back. And expensive, obviously, but the way the money has to come in, there's a certain way you have to do it. You can't just borrow it in the company because it's going to sit on the balance sheet. You should borrow it as the individual, like a personal loan in the mezz debt, and then they've got a guarantee from you, and then you put in the company as equity. So there's ways that you have to structure that, and the ways that banks want you to structure that if you're going to go down that path. And again, the banks aren't massive fans. And the third way is, but also when you're doing a leverage transaction, and we have done many of them, probably lent 30 to 40 mil on a leverage basis. But I'll only generally do it with pharmacies that the buyer is actually working in the store.
Yes, okay.
So you've got to take out that other part of complication of being it's a new store, don't know it, new to the area. But generally they'll be guys and girls who have worked in there for 2 to 3 years.
Got it.
They've got a good handle on it, and they know they can actually get uplift in the asset. And when we do the cash flows, so we'll do the cash flows on the leverage basis and look at what's left over at the end of it to make sure, you make enough money to live on, pay tax, and there's a surplus at the end of it.
Yeah. Because
the way servicing works at banks is two sort of different ways you've got to look at it. You've got to look at the way the bank service it, and then we look at it from the basis of, this is what the banks will say, but this is how much is going to be left over. so you can service this other debt if on a normal basis.
Got it.
And so the third way is a partnership, right? You go into a partnership, and mate, Nat, you and I have worked with in this industry long enough to know that partnerships end, and they can end friendly or very abruptly.
Yeah.
And like anything, when going into partnerships, it's buyer beware. She may sound like the nicest person in the world when you go into these things, but after you've bought in 20% and then you work there for another 5 years, and that's all they're prepared to offer you. You've just spent 5 years of your life building their business, and you only get a 20% stake in it. It's you've got to go into a partnership knowing how to get out.
Yes,
and that's the best way to look at it.
Yeah.
Everyone says it's like a marriage, and I've been through one of them. And you know what? And I've been through partnerships, and I've got rid of partners, and I think getting rid of partners or moving partners out of the business has been the hardest part. I'd probably rather go through another divorce.
Wow.
So.
That's, and the thing is as well, Mark, like I feel like we always get called in when they turn bad. So it's like you see the worst of the worst with partnership. And if people don't have a partnership agreement set up, if they don't have all the scenarios thought of, it can be so complicated and messy. And like you said, like the emotions that are involved, the rationality goes out the window sometimes as well.
It's a methodology to get out. Like, a lot of partnerships that you find coming out the other end, it's like we'll get a val and we'll just agree to the val and that'll be the price. And then you go, well, that's not really market value, is it? Because the value is only going to put on what he thinks it's worth in the market. And the market's pretty busy at the moment. Is that, there's it's probably, 20 to 30%, markup in the market at the moment because the market's hot. So you go, well, valuation is not going to take that into consideration. So I think that's, and you've probably been in that situation. That is the bit that you find, that's the biggest tipping point is how you exit is the methodology on which you exit becomes the hardest part, right? So, many a battle over that.
That's it. And I feel like as well, when you're getting into partnership, everything's happy and everyone's pumped about it and super excited. So best to sort out those details up front when the relationship is good. And then hopefully it goes well. We've seen many pharmacist partnerships over the years that have lasted 20, 30, 40 years and been very successful as well. So hopefully it goes like that. But if not, then at least you've got all the terms agreed up front. And like you said, it's not simple. There's a lot of complications involved if it does go bad.
Yeah. Bad stories out there, let me tell you.
That's it. But having said that, obviously, so you've mentioned the three approaches, and each approach can work very differently depending on the business that you're buying, how much cash and equity you need. And so buyers can come across to you and say, look, this is what I'm looking for. What are the different options? And obviously, you've got huge knowledge in the risks and benefits of each of those. But overall, like obviously you've been working in pharmacy for a long time. What do you consider the traits or like the decision-making process of the successful pharmacy owners in how they go about buying pharmacies, and then once they've bought it, the actual operations as well?
Yeah. Look, it's there's a lot of good operators out there. And look, I must admit, I've been around for so long. You see every model as well. Yes. Everyone who's buying in a group and buying the large guys and how they buy, and everyone's got this quirkiness about how they do business and what have you. Keep it as less complicated as possible. But those successful guys, like they all work on their businesses a lot. They don't necessarily work in their business. If you're one operator, if you're one pharmacy operator, I guess, the owner, look, it's pretty simple. You get in there and you focus on the client, and which is the end customer is your number one priority. Everything else is peripheral. You can get people to help you do a lot of that stuff anyway, but the successful guys who are multi-pharmacy owners, and what we find is that if you're going to own one store, awesome, you buy 2 or 3, and you'll probably have partners working in it. Great, but when you get to 5, it becomes a bit of a tipping point. we find. They'll go into another state, or they'll go to another partnership over here, and then, there's a lot of complexities that come into the business around suddenly IT systems, all this sort of stuff. So if you go find a couple of good stores, just run the good stores. They're probably going to be as profitable as those 5 stores. But getting into those businesses and, running it yourself is the key. Is the absolute, you've got to be boots on the ground. Gone are the days where you can go and play golf and have someone run your store. It's not, you can still do that, but you don't do it every single day. It's very much you've got to be hands-on. It is hard work. It is, buying a store now, and Nat, you can't turn a store around within 2 years.
Yeah, it
takes that long to flow the old stock out, change the behaviours of the staff, new buying coming in. You probably change a banner or two. You've got all this going on. You don't make money. It's 2 years of hard work. It's 5 years. It's a 5-year mindset when you're buying in. You've got to take a 5 year, and this is what these guys do. They're not going in for a short win. They're all taking long-term views on these assets, because you have to.
Yeah.
To get a good return out of the asset, you've got to take a long-term view on it.
Yeah.
So, so the more successful guys, and when they all have working partners, working owners, so they'll all go into partnership with younger guys, and that's a good way again to get in, because you're learning also with these really smart blokes who have been at it for so long. You're learning from them, and you've got an equity share in the asset that you're building up, and you're building up the value of that asset while you're learning. So it's like me, before being a broker, the best place I could work is a bank, because they're going to pay me to learn. Same sort of thing for you guys when you go to partnership, or when young owners go to partnership. Going to partnership with someone who's really good, you're going to learn a lot more, a lot quicker, and you're going to limit your risk. So that we joke about how bad partnerships can go, but that's sort of getting back to that is you go in with these guys, you'll learn a lot more, but they'll help you grow, because they'll have the equity as well. So they'll buy the next one down the street that comes up, and you can go in at 10% with them, and you sweat equity is a real thing. You're harder you work, and if you get a good partner that allows you to buy when they bought in, and you increase the value of the asset, a lot of partnerships will allow you to buy it at the original price, because the good pharmacists get that that's your hard work, that's increasing the value of his asset or her asset.
Yeah.
So, but those guys sit at the top. They're looking at the best deal. They're looking at market forces, what's moving around the area, how, what should we be doing to increase the business turnover, where we can cut costs, looking at wages. Like, they're sort of sitting above the businesses then, and you'll get to that point in your life where it's a great place to sit, but it also brings a lot more of the stress.
Yeah, that's right.
Running a successful business takes time, and that's probably give yourself a 5-year horizon, and that's and then you'll see the benefits. But it's hard some days when you're stuck in there between the 4 walls.
That's
putting
it.
labels on boxes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I think what you mentioned there, essentially like mentorship in pharmacy. I think that's what we've both had mentors in our professional experience, but in pharmacy, people are so happy to particularly owners are so happy to share the ideas and share the knowledge and guide younger pharmacists, particularly those looking to get into pharmacy owners. So as Mark said, take advantage of that and make sure that you find a mentor in your team with pharmacists and pharmacy owners that have been around long enough that they can teach you that ownership skill, because being a good pharmacist professionally is very different to being a good pharmacy owner and operator. Very different.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in that, you also mentioned equity, Mark. So for particularly our younger listeners that are maybe looking to buy their first pharmacy, can you explain the term of equity in layman's terms as to what that means in terms of the ownership of the pharmacy?
Yeah, look, so equity, I mean, really it's basically the bit you're going to pull out of your pocket, right? So the bank will lend you 80%. You've got $2 million pharmacy. So the bank will lend you 1.6 million, and so you're going to find 400,000 cash. 400,000 cash is your equity, right? But equity is not just cash; it's also you can get equity, create equity through amortizing loans and the value of the asset increasing. So when you sit down and look at it, if we go back to option 1 or 2 that we spoke about, is the mum and dad, banker mum and dad, or mez debt option. So you get this equity, it's a 1.6 mil from the bank, got to find 400. How long would it take you to save 400,000? Like, it's going to take you a long time. And pharmacies aren't coming down in value. They seem to keep go up, right? So when you think about it, you're in a market, you got 6,000 stores, 6,000 licenses, and they only come on the market so often. It's not like you can build one right, move a pharmacy right next door or just start one up overnight. You've got to get a license. So supply demand, big issue in this industry. But it creates goodwill value, right? So it's a double-edged sword. So you go, how long is it going to take? If I happen to have 400 grand, you put your 400 grand in, right? All beautiful, and you start running the store, you start advertising the debt, and what you'll see is, your value of the asset start to grow. But if you leverage the asset, and you get the banker mum and dad or the mez debt type option, what you got to do is, in banking, you take 3-year cycles. So you don't go and get a 15-year loan or a 25-year loan, or you don't do it with your house. You may not think it. You think you're paying a 30-year loan, but you're not. You're only paying, taking 3-year or 5-year hits. If you took a 30-year loan, it was so expensive you couldn't afford it, because they've got to put the money away for 30 years. So what we do is you take a 15-year payment, and then you're amortizing your debt over that 15 years, okay? But every 3 years, you review the loan, so the pricing gets done. So price of the loan is only priced on 3 years, okay? It's very important. If you price on 2 years, it's cheaper. But by the time we don't do too many 2 years deals, because by the time you settle the deal, you're 18 months in, you've got to start doing all the paperwork again for the next period. So it's a bit of a pain in the ass. So you take a 3-year term. So when you go and borrow the 400 grand to put in as well, right? You're fully leveraged. You're sitting there and you're going, well, 2 ways I can pay this back. One is I'm paying back the bank's amortization. So every month I'm going down and paying off that loan, and that amortizes over 15-year payment. So there'll be a value at 3 years that it's been written down to or paid down to. Your equity loan, you're not paying anything off there, you're just paying interest costs. But what's happening is, and the Guild says that your pharmacy should be growing about 4.5% per annum, right? So you've got this thing called capital growth going in. So you're in there working your butt off. You're servicing the clients, because that's your number one priority, because you've got all this debt now you've got to pay off. You're paying this interest cost. You got this thing called tax bills coming in, like the ATO or after you. It's all happening, right? So you're looking after the customer. You're in there, you're filling, you're going, mate, you're trying to fill baskets. Your basket size gone from the old owner to this now, because then you're trying to put more shit in it. So you're working your ring off to get the best out of the customer, and that's what you should be doing. That's also increasing the value of the business, because you're increasing your turnover, you're working more hours, your wages are coming, you're bringing your wages back in because you're doing all the hours now, and the old owner had you in there and all that sort of stuff. He's paying you, $60 an hour, whatever it is. So you're now working there. So you're creating this thing called EBITDA. And EBITDA is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. EBITDA is the good money in your pocket. You want that sweet EBITDA, because then people like valuers will take that EBITDA and they'll turn it into future maternal earnings, FME, and then they'll put a cap rate on it, which is their own personal opinion of what they think of that pharmacy in that market at that point, and it comes out with a number. So the harder you work, the value of that asset increases. So you get to a point at 3 years and you sit down in Churchy, mate, we want to get rid of this 400 grand loan. Then we look at what the value of the asset is at that 3-year mark and how much you've paid off. And then you create, there's this gap, right? So I can re-leverage up to 80% on the new value, and hopefully I'll have enough money in the business to pay out the other loan. And generally after 3 years, if you've worked really hard in that business and you've created good EBITDA and you've got that sweet money rolling in and you're paying all that tax because you're making too much money, you'll get that value. Like it's nearly when we were doing the math, when we were lending money to pharmacists direct for this equity position, most of those young guys got out at 3 years. if they weren't out, they're probably like $70,000-$80,000 short, and we can sort that elsewhere. That's an easy number to cover. 400 is a bit harder.
Yeah.
So it's that it goes on to maybe when's the best time to buy? Well, when's the best time to buy a house?
Yeah.
It's just going up in value, right? Yeah. So if you get the opportunity to get in, and get the mezz debt equity and buy it, or get the money from the parents and buy it, or even get off on a partnership. But as soon as you're in, you start amortizing your other debt and you start increasing the value of the asset, you'll go, mate, within 3 years, I've saved basically 400 grand. So whereas how long is it going to take you to save 400 grand?
Yeah.
So it's like get in sooner, borrow, beg, steal, well, don't steal, but, don't rob anyone, but, just get out there and if you can scrape the money together, better to get in now, because once you're in, you're getting this thing called capital growth in the asset, and you're paying off your debt, because debt is compulsory savings. That is what debt is rather than the bank's just taking it off you, but it's actually going to something good to pay down your debt. It's not a bad thing. Don't be scared of debt. Debt structured in the right way can be good.
Oh, that's good. There are so many nuggets of gold in what you just said. But really what the key thing was there is that what you've just described is what every successful pharmacy owner has done from day dot.
Correct.
They've built the equity in their business, they've grown their business, then they've leveraged to then buy the second pharmacy and the third pharmacy and the fourth pharmacy. And,
Correct.
We mentioned obviously the risk. We want to make sure, particularly for first time buyers, that we cover all the risks that are there so you're aware as to what they are. But then ultimately that's how you create the reward and build financial wealth for yourself and your family moving forward. And what you've just described there is exactly how every successful pharmacy owner has done it, which is awesome. That's really good.
You've got to look. You've got to look at ownership as an investment. You can be a PAYG pharmacist and earn good money, right? But there's not many investments you can take your money, put in, get 14-15% return, right? Maybe a bit less if you're paying too much. But it's a fairly strong, now that HCPA out, it's a very well protected area, very strong market. That's what's made it a strong market, which means the values keep going up. So your asset value is just going to increase. If you did nothing, you just went in there and just did exactly what the old owner did, which you would never do, but say you just did nothing to it, you're still going to get capital growth out of the asset and pay off your debt. Like it's a no-brainer. So when you think about, well, why should I buy? Well, if it's right for you, again, if that you want that lifestyle, as an investment, it's probably smarter than buying a pharmacy and buying a house. So you've got to take that into consideration. Where am I going to put all my money that's going to get me the same return as owning a pharmacy? And that's kind of the thought process you need to go to. Think of it as an investment. Don't think of it as, I'm just going to buy a business, run a business, own my own business, because owning your own business is hard work. And you won't see life for 5 years. And, unfortunately, if you're female, and you want to have children, you don't have anyone to come and run your pharmacy for you. You've got to, start a creation there, which is, sad in a way, which is something that should be addressed. But, you've got to think, I've got to take a 5 year skew on this. But if you work out that 5 years, you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really good advice there, Mark. I really appreciate it. So we're coming to the end of our time, but just one final question that I think is really important, particularly for those first-time buyers, is when they're choosing advisors to help them in the pharmacy purchase journey. What's your kind of tips for first-time buyers when they are choosing which advisors to work with? Be it a pharmacy finance broker like yourself, business broker obviously like myself, but then there's bankers, lawyers, accountants. You need a full team.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, they get to choose who they buy the pharmacy off.
That's true. That's
that
true.
one's already done for them.
Yeah. That's very true. Very true.
If that was the case, you'll sell my store any day of the week. So look, trusted advice. Get industry people. Got to get industry people. Every time industry accountants, these are a list of them. You can find them anywhere. Lawyers, industry lawyers, because you know what? They know how to write the sale contracts, know what to look for. lease negotiators. Like there is a good group, and we all work together. Like I don't think I have any issues with anyone in this industry from the supplier side of it. So all the accountants I know, all the lawyers I know, and we all work together. We're all pretty friendly sort of people. So we can pick up a phone to any one of them and say, hey, I think we've got a problem here. What do you think? And they'll, discuss it over the phone. Finding a good broker, look, shamelessly, I'd say I'm probably the best. But look, if you go to the bank direct, it's like in mortgages, they're having issues because on all this online banking, people go into their application. 95 of people do their application online, get to the final hurdle, and then turn off the computer.
Oh.
They don't submit.
Wow.
Because they are worried that what they say in that application could affect their credit. So they drop that, and this is the stat that the broker market came up with. 70% of all mortgages go for a broker now.
Wow!
Because they want to tell someone their story. The broker knows what the bank needs to know. So getting a good trusted finance broker who then shows you he went to the bank. You don't listen to a broker who goes, mate, went to NAB, got you the best deal. Here it is. No one's going to do a better deal than that. Oh, okay, cool. Well, where else did you go? Oh, I went to all the others, but this is the best one. No. Like we do here, we'll go to all 3-4 banks, depending on where it sits. Here's your minimum, here's your 3 banks. You choose. I don't have to deal with them. Like, they're wholesalers to me. I just got to get you the best money, the best rate, with the best terms, the best leverage. And then you're the one I want to have a relationship with the banker. So, you're trusted, check their backgrounds, don't just call one, call 2. I'll give you 3 accountants every time. I'll give you, lease mortgages, lease negotiators. Yeah, absolutely. I can go to any 2 and go, you talk to them. You'll feel more comfortable with the person you deal with, but deal with industry people. Totally. It makes it so much easier. Like when you get into the store, worry about the customer, right? You buy your first something, worry about the customer. Go get a bookkeeper. Don't be stingy trying to do it yourself, because it'll cost you more money in the long run. And you think you're saving money, but you're not. You still got to have a social life. You still want to, I know pharmacists who would go home and then start doing BAS returns. Like go home and see your family. Go home and have a beer with the boys. Go home and drink with the girls. Go to the races. Do stuff that young people want to do. Enjoy life. But there's so many good people and do it so much quicker and save you time and money by doing it. Get accountant to do your accounts. Get a bookkeeper to do your books. Get a HR. Gil's got HR support. Get someone to help you with HR. There's so many things to help you once you're in there. Just focus on the customer, because you will make money. Yeah, absolutely.
That's perfect, Mark. That's really good. I think that's great advice for all our listeners, and I think there's been some really good, valuable insights in what you've said today. So I really appreciate your time. And for those of you that want to get in touch with Mark, his contact details will be on the Pharmacy View website. So any questions, feel free to reach out, Mark. Thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Nat. Lovely to chat. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us today on the Pharmacy View podcast, and don't forget to like, share and leave us a comment if you found this episode of value or have feedback. Podcast episodes are promoted through social media, LinkedIn, YouTube and major podcast mediums, and each episode can be found on the Pharmacy View webpage with links to guest contact details and business details. If you're a pharmacist or industry stakeholder and would like to join us on an episode, please send us a message through LinkedIn or complete the inquiry form on the Pharmacy View webpage. I'm your host, Natalie Sirianni, Director at Attain Business Brokers, and thanks again for joining us today on the Pharmacy View podcast.